I just want to introduce myself. I'm Fiona Smith. I'm the Executive Office Manager with responsibility for corporate governance and support to our boards of management. I can confirm that the meeting is quorate, so we are fine to go ahead tonight. Just before the meeting starts formally, can I just clarify some virtual housekeeping arrangements with you? Just to confirm that everyone is muted and there's no opportunity to chat. It is a watch-only meeting. However, questions and topics were invited from members in advance of tonight's meeting, and all of those key messages and responses will be included in tonight's presentations. If, however, at the end of the evening, if you have any questions arising from the presentations, then please contact Adele Drennan, our Governance Officer, and her details are in your AGM pack. And just finally, to remind you that the presentation is being recorded. We want to do that to share it with members who weren't able to join with us virtually tonight, so it will appear on our website. However, it will capture, the recording will capture the speakers only. So you won't be recorded, but if you want, please feel free to turn your camera off at any point, but you will not be recorded. Our speakers this evening are Marilyn Clues, our Chair of the Board. Marilyn, you could give us a wave. Shona Stephen, our Chief Executive. Neil Manley, our Director of Finance and Corporate Support and also Company Secretary. And Scott Gillen, the Audit Partner from Wiley & Bissett. So thanks very much, and I'm now going to hand you over to Marilyn. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Association's 44th Annual General Meeting. It's good to see you, and thank you for attending tonight in what is our first virtual AGM. My name is Marilyn Clues. I'm Chair of Queen's Cross Housing Association, and I'm also an association tenant. As we all try to cope with what has been a momentous year for our families, our friends, communities, and ourselves, it can be difficult to look back to a time when we weren't thinking about how we can deal with today's tasks and wondering what tomorrow will bring. As I look ahead to this, my final year as chair of the association, there's a lot of uncertainty still remaining. But from what I've seen and been part of over the past 6 months, the association will continue to be here, doing everything it can to make the right decisions, to bring continuity, advice, service and reassurance where it can. Working as partners with residents and communities to get through this strange and difficult time. One thing I'm sure of is that when the end of this year comes, I'll be stepping down as association chair, knowing that the board is in good shape and in good hands. I would like to thank you as association members for your support and for being here tonight. I also would like to thank all the association's residents and customers for the overwhelming support and assistance they've given us this year, understanding why services had to change almost overnight, and keeping yourselves and association staff safe by following Scottish Government guidance. I would like to mention the association's executive team and staff for their for their ongoing responsiveness, for adapting their everyday practice suddenly and in some cases for some time to come. Thank you all for doing a fantastic job. And to end, I'd just like to say, look after yourselves, your neighbours and your communities. Stay safe as we're not through this yet, but we have a great community spirit we can depend on. Thank you. I will now hand over to Neil Manley, who will take us through the previous minutes.
Thanks, Marilyn. As Fiona mentioned, we circulated in advance of the meeting the minutes from last year, and obviously in these different arrangements, it's not possible to ask people for queries. So we've asked in advance if anybody's got any questions or clarifications on the minutes from last year, and I just can confirm that there was nothing raised in advance. And I can also confirm that we've got a proposer for the minutes from last year. So Cecilia Scully's proposed them and Margaret Glass has seconded the minutes from last year. So on the basis that there being no clarifications and with those proposers and seconders, we can take the minutes as being agreed. I'll now pass over to Shona Stephen, Chief Exec, who will give an annual report.
Hi there, everybody. Just like to add my own thanks to everyone for joining us this evening in what is probably one of our most unusual AGMs. Hopefully next year we'll be back to being able to have a cup of tea and a chat in the hall. But thank you very much for making the effort to join us either by phone or online, excuse me, tonight. What I would normally do at an AGM such as this is I would look back on the year from the last AGM to this one and talk a bit about what's been happening and what we've done, and then look forward to the year ahead. So it's slightly different this year in that I will touch on both of those things, but I'm also going to spend a bit of time just obviously talking through what has been the most significant impact on all of our lives, and that's just been the COVID-19 pandemic that we've been involved in. So I'm going to just share a presentation with you, and I'll talk through this so that hopefully those on the phone can get this as well. So, okay, we know that the pandemic that we're still going through, that started earlier in the year and that we're still going through, has probably been one of the worst public health crises we've all had to face, certainly in many of our living memory. And I think the evidence is all showing us quite clearly that it's having the worst impact on those communities which are poorer and which are facing most disadvantage. And that unfortunately is only going to be made worse by what is almost certainly an economic recession that we're moving into. There will be jobs lost and businesses closing. And that in turn, on top of the effect of the pandemic, is going to exacerbate the inequalities that already exist within our society, and that is going to continue to be a significant challenge for all of us, and it's something that in the association we're bearing in mind when we're looking at the way ahead. The Scottish Government outlined 5 phases of transition from the lockdown, which began on 16th of March, through to where we are just now, which is phase 3. We moved into that in July, and they've been reviewed every 3 weeks by Scottish Government. And we in Queen's Cross Housing Association are also doing a similar review of our services in line with guidance from the government itself. And the facts of all of those phases that we know are that we have to continue to protect ourselves by wearing masks when we're out, by keeping our distance, and obviously by isolating if we have any symptoms. And that remains the same through all of these phases. So what's Queen's Cross done? Well, Queen's Cross has issued, and hopefully you should all have received, a copy of our own route map out of crisis. And we felt this was important to provide some kind of sense of where we were going to, both our tenants and our staff, to give people a bit of a framework for how we were going to respond and move forward and create some certainty within this period, which is kind of marked most strongly by uncertainty. So you'll know that from as soon as lockdown was announced, we closed our office, and all of those staff who could work from home did so. and we were providing emergency services only to our tenants. We did try to increase communication using social media. It's been the safest way of doing that. And many of our staff, almost half of our staff, continued to work as normal. Our estate caretaking staff, our direct organisations providing plumbing and such like work continued to deliver, and handy persons were working, and our wellbeing services providing help to our over 60s, our young homeless tenants, and the team supporting those for good mental health, all went about their business pretty much as normal throughout that period. We also set up some new services that we didn't have before, directly in response to the problems that many of our tenants were facing. And that was the food delivery service that was run and continues to run from the cafe at Wester Common in conjunction with Flourish House. And also an emergency fund was established to provide just what it does, immediate and emergency support for tenants who needed that. And we've issued the route map that you should all have to show how we're changing our services as each of the phases moves on. So we're in phase 3 now, and that's meant that there's been a bit more loosening in terms of what we can do, and most of our services are now being delivered safely. Those staff who can work at home are doing that where possible. That's still very much the guidance from Scottish Government, is people staying at home, reducing travel, reducing just contact between people where possible. But staff are coming into the office for periods during the week to use that as and when they need to do that to help provide the new services, the additional services that are now being delivered. And there are some appointments being made for people to come in to see staff, but only on a very limited basis. We still want to use phones and online where possible. But some home visits can be carried out, obviously subject to the proper hygiene and safety measures to make sure that everyone is reassured on that. Our investment programme is restarted at Springbank Street, so there's work happening there. And there's work up at Hamilton Hill on our new build. The groundworks are being done there, and work on actually building the new houses will begin in the next couple of months. Our community cafe up at Wester Common is open now for takeaway, but our community facilities remain closed. And one of the things that we have done during the course of lockdown and continue to do is really work on digital inclusion. It's been very obvious throughout the whole of this crisis that access to the internet has been absolutely crucial to get information, to communicate and to deliver services. And we know that there's still a large number of our tenants who don't have access to the internet, and we're working to try and support as many people as possible to do that. But to reassure those for whom that isn't an option, that we will always look to deliver services to people in other ways as well. So the next phase we've got to look forward to will obviously be phase 4, and we don't know when that's likely to be. We're still waiting for guidance from Scottish Government. But I suppose it was just to be clear to people that it's unlikely, I think, in Queen's Cross, the same as with many other businesses, that things will go back exactly to the way they were before the crisis hit. I think people have seen some of the benefits from home and flexible working. We've seen how we can deliver a wider range of services at perhaps different types of ways to people using digital services. So we're going to look at increasing the use of that where that's appropriate. And we're hoping that obviously some of the social activities that many people will be missing will resume when there's a further relaxation on gatherings. But we know that one of the things that will likely to remain is the need for physical distancing. So there will be ongoing restrictions on how we can all work together. So one of the things that was important for us, as it always is, was to find out what were your views, what were our tenants' views of how we responded to the pandemic. We'd obviously had to make a number of choices about changing the way we did things, and we wanted to know whether that they'd worked for tenants or if there was things that we could be doing better. So during the month of July, we carried out a survey, and that was of 400 tenants, and they were representing the range of our tenants in terms of age, in terms of gender, in terms of the neighbourhoods that they lived in. And we got some interesting and helpful information back from people, and it showed that amongst our tenants there was a very high awareness of the changes to services. So over 90% of people knew they could call the office on the phone, and 88% knew which facilities were closed and that emergency repairs were the only service that was being delivered. And 86% knew that our clubs and activities were cancelled. So people knew what was available and how to contact the office, and that's probably the most important thing. There was also high awareness of those particular services that people got. Now, these numbers might seem a bit lower, but these are specific services not delivered to all tenants, they're only delivered to some tenants. So 63% knew they could get finance and benefits advice, and over half were aware of the food delivery service. And about 60% knew that certainly in the high-rise flats, there was more frequent cleaning in the public places to try again to keep on top of the issues of the COVID. There was a slightly lower awareness of social media, but again, that probably reflects the fact that not all of our tenants are online, and of those who are, probably social media errs towards maybe some of our younger tenants, but certainly over half knew that there were updates available on social media and the website, which was good. And there was a bit less awareness of our wellbeing services around our over 60s for good mental health and housing first for young people. But again, the awareness amongst those people who received those services was high. So all in all, we felt quite positive about the fact that the information people had was useful and that people knew what information they could get, what services they could get, and how they could access them. Most people were using the phone, 94% were calling the office, and 43% of that contact had been by the tenants calling us, and 35% had been by members of staff calling our tenants. So we would want to see that higher, and we're going to continue to be making direct contact with our tenants to find out just what services we can provide and how, and if they are being provided in the best way for those people. But 92% of people said that it was easy or very easy to contact the office. So we were encouraged that people knew how to contact us and found it easy to do so, and that the largest proportion of that was by phone. So again, big thanks to our contact centre staff who have been continuing to work every day delivering that service for us all. And when people did make contact, 85% said that was helpful. And that's really encouraging, because obviously we want to be able to do what you want us to do when you call us. And most of those calls were for emergency repairs. The most frequent reason for us to be calling our tenants was to find out if people were okay, do a welfare check, and around 15% it was for rent advice. So people were able to get the help they wanted, and they said that it was easy to do so. And then when we asked them, how had we done in terms of the services we delivered and the way we'd responded to the COVID-19 impact, 38% had said very good and 39% good. So that's really good. That's 75% of people, 76%, 77% of people saying that we'd done very well, and 16% of people feeling that it didn't really have an opinion. So obviously that it wasn't bad, and only 8% of people saying poor or very poor. So we were pleased to see that, and glad that people felt that they were receiving the services that they could reasonably receive during the crisis, and that the way we were moving to deliver more services and keep people informed was working for them. Now, we always want to obviously improve on that, and we're happy to get any kind of guidance or feedback from people like yourselves about what we could be doing better. So as I said earlier, what we would normally equally be doing is saying, you know, what have we done in the last year, and particularly at this AGM, we would have been talking about the last 3 years, because it's 3 years since we launched our last business plan, and this is the last year of that plan. But I'm pleased to say that we feel we could be sharing a number of successes. We told you 9 key objectives, things that we really wanted to deliver in 3 years up to 2020. And that included refurbishing our multi-stories and having excellent caretaking services in place. We've transformed also the support for our older people with our crisis and intervention service. And we've seen the number of tenants who are online increase by 20%. So we've now got nearly 70% of our tenants online. Obviously that's not all down to Queen's Cross, but we've contributed significantly to that, and we're pleased to see those numbers going up. And we've also actively improved wellbeing and addressed issues of poverty for our tenants over that period as well, whether that's the community gardens or the range of activities that people have to be involved in, or whether that's our finance and benefit advice or the community chest that's available for our younger residents, a whole range of activities there. We've been doing our best to keep rents affordable and make sure that those who are working can meet the cost of their rents, and we've set up a tenancy sustainment team whose remit is to help and support people to keep their tenancies and stay as members of our community. And also worked on trying to find more opportunities for tenants to be involved in the decision-making aspects of the housing association. And while we would like to have been underway perhaps further with the new homes at Hamilton Hill and Burnbank Gardens, we are making headway with them now and seeing as I say, the groundwork being done and the work starting at Hamilton Hill. So that's looking back, and the last thing really to share with you is looking forward. And what we've decided to do for our next business plan is, as ever, be as ambitious as we can be. But we're looking over the next 5 years. We think that the impact of COVID and the scale of the tasks that we're setting us will probably mean that we need a 5-year plan to be looking at what we can do within that time. So very quickly, what you told us you wanted, some of you may have been involved in the business planning sessions that we held this time last year. We were involving tenants and staff and various other people to tell us what they thought we should be doing in the next 5 years. What should the priorities for the association be? And what people said to us, what our tenants said was they wanted rents to be affordable, especially for people who are working. They want to live in well-managed neighbourhoods. They want services to be responsive and, as far as possible, 24/7. And people to be helped to stay at home and live independently for as long as possible. And then looking at the health of children and young people and tenants, and that's mental health as well as physical. And that's very important because I think we all know that this pandemic has really affected people's mental health. And that's something that we'll be looking at to see what part we can play in supporting people through that. And understanding how what we do impacts on tenants' lives. So we took all of those suggestions, ideas, and everything that our tenants said, and we reckoned that the vision and values that the association has and has had for the last 10 years will stay the same. We want to deliver excellent housing in vibrant communities, and we want to build on our values of respect, aspiration, and integrity. And we want to continue to provide high quality homes, deliver excellent services, invest in our people and their life opportunities, and challenge poverty. We want to build greener spaces and healthier lives. We really want to look at that environmental agenda, and we want to continue to be a dynamic community partner. And that means working with anyone who's got ideas or the energy or the resources to do things that continue to make Queen's Cross the best place to work and to live. So we've set ourselves again a number of key ambitions, and just to share them with you, between now and 2025, we want to be putting much more focus on hearing our tenants' voices and putting them at the heart of what we do in our decision making. So really looking at how does local democracy get revitalised, and how do we work closely with all of our tenants and hear what they have to say. And one of the questions that was asked before the AGM, someone had, I think very correctly pointed out that there is a shortage, or it seems to be that there are fewer people from minority ethnic communities represented on our community involvement groups and our governing board and other such groups than perhaps is representative of the communities in which we live. And I think we would all acknowledge that, and it's very much something that over the next 5 years we want to work alongside people to address and to find out the best ways of doing, of doing that, how to get people involved so that the voices we're hearing are truly the voices of those people living in our communities. And we want to have some of the greenest neighbourhoods in the city. I mean, we're blessed by having the canal running right through Queen's Cross, and all of the regeneration work that's been going on there is really transforming the heart of Queen's Cross. And at Hamilton Hill, there's going to be new community parks, and across Woodside, around the flats there's going to be a huge environmental project with new trees and new greening of the city. And obviously building the houses at Hamilton Hill as well, and certainly we would like to think nearly half of them built within the next 5 years. And clearly getting more of our tenants online. It's not going to just be the way forward for Queen's Cross, that's going to be the way forward for most businesses. So the more people that are online and understand how to use that, the better opportunities for everyone. And finally, we want to continue to support our young people and families. and to address those issues of poverty that people are going to be facing, I think, more as a result of this pandemic and the oncoming recession. So we're looking at what we can do and work with others to support people in that, and really look at putting climate change first, looking at how we reduce our carbon footprint and damage to the environment. And again, you know, that's something we'll be speaking to people about. How do we all do that? Because that's something that we have to do as individuals as well as an organisation, and continue to support our tenants in improving health and wellbeing and reducing loneliness. As Marilyn said at the beginning, there's a strong community spirit across Queen's Cross, and it's important that we play our part in continuing to make that thrive and deliver for the people who live here. So the next steps really are keeping you informed of what's happening in our route map. So as soon as anything changes in terms of the services that we can deliver or the way things are happening, and that might mean things closing down again. If things tighten up, as we've seen in the last week, there could be changes at local level. Things may happen in Glasgow or in Queen's Cross that may change how we deliver things. So we need to keep being responsive, and we need to keep you informed. And we want to work to deliver services and keep everyone safe. So whatever we do, I want to reassure everyone that it's about trying to provide the services that we can, but it's always about keeping you and our staff safe. And we'll be coming back out to you with our final draft of our business plan, asking you for your thoughts and views on that before it's finally put out there in October, and we'll share that event with you. And really, we're going to just continue to listen, because it is about learning what we do that you think works and what you think we could be doing a bit better. So I would just like to thank you for the opportunity of sharing that with you, and to, again, just to reassure you that everything that we're doing now is about moving the services of Queen's Cross forward, but it's also about being aware of the situation that we're operating in and working to keep everyone safe. So, thank you very much. I will now go back to Neil, who is going to take you through the annual accounts.
Thanks, Shona. I'm just going to have to share a file as well, which I found the most difficult thing to do earlier, so bear with me. And again, just thanks everybody for joining us in these different circumstances. Let's hope next year we can do this in a real sense. So, is that a thumbs up from everybody? Is everybody seeing that? And the next trick is, can I move between slides? Not yet. Click on it. There. Okay, that's good. That's me set up. So yeah, so thanks for joining. Essentially what I'll go through is really just a sort of verbal addition to the mailing that went out with the AGM information. And my phone is just listening to me. So I'm going to go through the annual accounts, and for a member, what it's really doing is giving you assurance on the financial position and the controls we have in place. It's providing you as a member with an annual update on the finances. And importantly, it's about transparency on the association's affairs and how we manage the resources. And I suppose that essentially is one of the key parts of it. And importantly, as part of that is getting an independent view. It's not necessarily just what I'm saying. And really feeding into that, I'll introduce now Scott from Wiley & Bissett, our external audit partner, who undertake the external audit each year. And they say he and his staff do have an independent view, and will look at all our records and all our finances and come together, and he's able to report back on an annual basis on the accounts and provide a view for you as members on that. So if you want to just unmute Scott now, he'll feed into that.
Hello there everyone, can you hear me? Good evening. Thanks very much, Neil. That's super. I really just want to say a few things this evening with regard to the work that we undertook and our results. So if I start first of all with the financial statements, there are two audit opinions in there, one on the numbers themselves and one in relation to governance matters and internal financial controls. So two opinions in there, and both are clean, unmodified opinions, which is the key thing, I think, for you to take away. So in relation to the numbers themselves, we're happy that the financial statements have been prepared in accordance with the rules and regulations with regard to housing associations and the statement of recommended practice. I'm happy that the financial statements give a true and fair view based on the records that we have reviewed, and that they've been properly prepared in accordance with the relevant legislation in the UK that housing associations need to follow. So therefore, essentially, we're happy with the numbers, that the numbers within the financial statements are materially correct, and indeed that the entity itself is financially sound and will be a going concern, which means it can continue to trade for the foreseeable future. So that is the first opinion that we are signing off on as auditors. And the second one relates, as I said, to governance and statement of internal financial control. And I'm happy again that there's compliance with the Scottish Housing Regulator regulatory standards in there, and the statement of internal financial controls is an accurate reflection of the position of the housing association, and that there are good controls in place. So that is our two opinions. As I said, both clean and unmodified, so that's good. In relation to the work that we undertook in the year, other aspects just to draw to your attention, we were satisfied that there were no frauds uncovered as part of our audit work, which is good. And the key areas of risk we have to look at around rental arrears and voids, loan covenant compliance, income recognition, which is principally ensuring that tenant rentals are correctly accounted for in the financial statements. And specifically this year, with regard to financial concerns around COVID, there was nothing to report to you. We got positive assurance in relation to all these things, which is good. And just an additional bit of information that I wanted to impart for this year, for anyone wondering, because of the current climate, we did undertake our full audit remotely this year. Information was passed between myself and my audit colleagues and the team at the Housing Association electronically, and we used a portal system to pass information to each other securely. And I'm happy that the audit was undertaken in the same robust manner as any other year. There's no less assurance being provided because of the means by which we had to undertake the audit. And that seemed to work very well, and we worked with management to ensure that the timeline for reporting to the audit committee and the board of management to approve the financial statements was met prior to the AGM here this evening. That's really all I wanted to say, so thank you very much, and I'll hand you back to Neil.
Thanks, Scott. I'll just take you through what I perceive as some of the sort of significant contexts and figures within the accounts now. And as Scott said, well, obviously the context of the audit itself was very much in COVID, so we did pass a lot of information remotely. But it's probably just reflecting that actually for the accounting period that it covered, 2019-2020, really actually the lockdown only impacted 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks of it. So really we're looking at a year itself, that wasn't materially impacted. It would be much more significant going forward, and I'll come on to that in a minute. The other context of financial reporting, and I think thinking of what you as a member wants out of the accounts, and essentially what is the key question, that final bullet point. How did we perform in the year, and how are we set for the future? So you want to be assured that we're making the best of the resources we've got, we're doing well with the finances, and actually as another organisation we're well set for the future. And I suppose in terms of the reporting context, I sometimes get frustrated in thinking annual accounts don't really do that particularly well. I think from a management accounts perspective, it's probably easier. So there are a couple of layers, and it's this middle bullet point that I'll talk about in a minute in the next slide. There are some layers in terms of the way the annual accounts report information and things we need to include, which may not necessarily actually reflect the performance. So what I'm talking about there in particular, within the set of accounts that we've got there for 1920 for the Queen's Cross Group, we've incorporated Queen's Cross Workspace, and the Workspace has been a partner organisation for a long time, but it's actually never been formally part of the group. This year, it joined the group, and to reflect that, the asset base of Queen's Cross Workspace, and that's not just cash, it's all the offices, all the workspaces, everything they've built up over the years in their operation. That Queen's Cross asset base has joined the Queen's Cross Group. And effectively what we've had to do in terms of accounting for that is show that £12 million as a gain. Now, in some respect, you'll say that's not really about the performance in the year. It's really about the growth of the assets. So I just wanted to reflect that 12 million gain is really about the organisation becoming bigger with more assets. It's not necessarily about the year-on-year performance. The other element, which isn't really a sort of operational transaction, and I mention this every year, the vagaries of pension accounting. So we're required to show the movement in the assets and the liabilities of our pension schemes year on year. And really the year end is sort of it's a touchstone. It's a one point of the year where we measure the pension commitments and the pension assets and just draw up a movement. So again, it's not necessarily about the performance in the year, it's about that actuarial gain, the movement. This year has been positive. In fact, and you're seeing a 4.7 million gain compared to a 2.7 loss the previous year. And I mean, I suppose that those 2 years show you how volatile this can be. I mean, longer term, we're working with our pension scheme to fund the deficit that was there, and we're on track to do that. So in a way, I would suggest that those actuarial gains muddy the situation, and really we want to focus really on what the operational position is. So this is the next slide. So in terms of the underlying housing association operational performance, and I'm focusing on the housing association here rather than the other members of the group, the workspace and the factoring company particularly. In the housing association performance, we've seen turnover up to 24.2 million from 23. That really reflects the fact that we've built new houses, and in prior years, the rents for those houses were only in the latter part. So what we've seen is actually the full year's growth for the new stock. So that's stabilised, and that 24.2 is really a new core income for the association. And our costs in the year were actually down slightly, down to 120k to 20 million. I think reflects good cost control. It's not as if we've cut back on services to do that. That's we've still delivered a good repairs and maintenance service. So that I think it evidences good cost control, and in terms of all the processes and techniques we've applied in terms of new procurement, we're there to drive down costs, and that's in some ways reflects that, and that's good. So the operating surplus of 3.9 million, we set that aside. That's an operational surplus. We know as an association, a lot of our spend doesn't go through that sort of operating income and surplus account. We need to generate surplus. We need to generate reserve. for the investment in existing homes, for new kitchens, bathrooms, etc., and for the investment in new homes, with Hamilton Hill on the agenda. So that operational surplus supports the future commitment. And the other thing to note, particularly against last year, in looking at the accounts, you'll see that the interest costs rose substantially. And the context of that is, people may be aware that last year we refinanced, we've taken new debt on already for Hamilton Hill, and that cash is sitting there. It's sitting there on deposit, trying to maximise as much as return as we can. But because it's additional debt, we need to finance it. So between the 2 years, you would have seen that interest has really gone up by about 800,000 between the 2 years. So those are the underlying sort of operational circumstances, and I think it does reflect that we're in a good situation. We've got solid asset base, we've got good cash reserves, and that's important because actually we're obviously entering a year which a lot more turmoil. So this is a pre-COVID year. Actually, the current year is one where we need to now carefully monitor the impacts on our finances. So in terms of the impact on COVID and our future plans, I think we do need to carefully monitor how COVID-19 is going to impact on our income and our forward expenditure plans. Income in terms of obviously sort of the rental arrear issue, and how COVID and the economic circumstances that will prevail afterwards will impact on people's ability to pay our rents. And importantly, in terms of our future expenditure plans, how COVID may impact on the market, or the opportunities for investing in our homes. Will there be the same number of companies ready to do the work? We've got a significant investment program, 8 million there in the current year, 29 million in 4 years thereafter. So a significant amount of money is due to be invested in our stock, and what we want to be is assured that there's a sufficient competition and companies interested in doing that work, and that's something we'll need to monitor. We do have the plans for Hamilton Hill, the finance, as I mentioned, the finance is in place, so we've got substantial cash reserves at the moment, which puts us in a reasonable position to meet any costs. But actually, we know we're going to be spending that money because we'll be building 42 million's worth of new homes in Hamilton Hill. 23 million of that's coming out of our coffers. We'll be getting Scottish Government grant for the remainder, but that's still a considerable investment by the association. And overarching all our plans are the commitments to keep rents affordable. We need to seek good values for money. We need to continue to get good procurement and make sure that those expenditure lines are kept down, and obviously we don't see increasing inflation on our investment plans, because only in that way we can be assured to keep rents affordable, which is the firm business plan commitment, as Shona has already mentioned. So finally, essentially I'm saying that although we know there are risks, the next current year will be a challenge, and COVID-19 is going to bring significant financial challenges. The association entered it in a very good position, and a good position to meet those costs. But I think the focus for the association right through the year is to carefully monitor the impact of COVID-19 and other factors on the finances. So moving on, each year at the AGM, we do take the opportunity to reappoint our external, or appoint the external auditors. Again, it's important from that question of an independent view. That's why we have the external auditors. Finance obviously is such a risk area. It's an important area for any organisation. To have external scrutiny is very important, and important for transparency and for your assurance. We appointed Wiley Bissett in 2017 for 3 years. The current year was the third year of that, but we had in the procurement process an option to extend for a further 2 years. And executive advice would be, certainly under the current circumstances and with the level of support and the commitment we're getting from Wiley and Bissett to undertake, to reappoint them to undertake the audit for 2020-2021. And I'd just like to again thank Scott, who is really still here, for their work and effort. It was different and probably didn't make the audit process any easier at all, actually. But we did get through it, and we've got a set of accounts ready for you here tonight. We're looking forward to doing it all again next year, but hopefully differently. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Neil. We're just going to move on now towards the end of our agenda to the appointment of governing body members. Just before I start, it's just to say how careful succession planning is the key to good governance, and to ensure the continued success of the Queen's Cross Group, the board has a plan in place to ensure progressive, refreshing and sustainability of our boards and our community involvement groups. As Shona mentioned earlier, the identification and development of new members is very important, as we want our board and CIG members to have a good mix of age, experience, backgrounds, as this will encourage better decision making. The board is currently seeking representation from groups where we know we are currently underrepresented. So if you or anyone you know would be interested in finding out more about what's involved, please contact us. And now for the formal appointment of governing body members. The process for advertising and seeking nominations has been the same this year as it has been every other year. What is different tonight is that instead of being presented with all the board and CIG members, including those being appointed for the first time or reappointed, this was issued to you in your AGM pack. The Association Board confirmed its support for all of the appointments when it met on the 18th of August. And I'd just like to point out that Cathy Corbett at Woodside CIG was omitted from the list, but Cathy has assured us that she is standing, and we're delighted that she continues to do so. So the Association Board confirmed its support for all of these appointments when it met on the 18th of August, and I've received no objections from the list that was sent out to you. And as the number of nominations are less than the number of vacancies, there's no need for a contested election. So all I need to do now is say welcome and thank you to all of our volunteer board and CIG members for the year 2020-21 and invite you to give them a virtual round of applause. Thank you very much, everyone, and I'll now hand over to Meryl.
Thanks, Fiona. It's now my pleasure to recognise and thank some of my board colleagues and to let you as association members know about 2 changes to the Housing Association Board. First, I want to thank David Horner, who is stepping down as the board's vice chair this year. David has been a fantastic vice chair and a pleasure to work with. Despite the fact he's stepping down as vice chair, I'm delighted to say that he will continue to serve on the board as an independent member, so we're not losing him after all. This takes me to my second announcement of the night, and I'm very pleased to let you know that our board member, Andrew Burns, has agreed to step forward and become our new vice chair. Thank you, Andrew. I look forward to working with you in the coming months. And finally tonight, I want to make very special mention of 2 more board members, Sadie Gordon and Margaret Glass, both of whom celebrate special birthdays this year. I don't know of two other people who have given more to Queen's Cross's people and communities than Margaret and Sadie. They are dedicated individuals, and I've had the pleasure of working with them through both the good and the more unusual times we find ourselves in today. Happy birthday to you from all of us in Queen's Cross, and make sure you take some time to treat yourselves. As I said earlier, this is our first virtual AGM. So I'd like to say thank you to Fiona and her team for their time and effort to make this evening possible, because I know it's been a lot of hard work. Thank you, everyone. I look forward to continuing to work with you on an exciting and innovative new year ahead. I will now hand over to Sadie Gordon, Vice Chair, who will close tonight's AGM.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for those congratulations, Marilyn. I won't tell you all what age, I suppose you all know what age I was. And I would just like to say this is a close of the 2020 AGM, a very unusual AGM, but hopefully in the future we will all meet again in person. I'll just have to say, take care and be safe. And if you would like to press the leave button, then thank you very much. Thank you.